This episode is brought to you by my bookkeeping strategy sessions. When it comes to your bookkeeping, you're probably in one of these three areas: doing it yourself, outsourcing some or all of your bookkeeping to a professional, or understanding what the reports mean and making better business decisions from that information. Each of these stages comes with different struggles and questions, and I can help with all three. Bring your questions, and I'll bring some solutions. To book one of these sessions, email me at lydia@dacbalance.com. Now on with the show. You've started a home-based service business, and you've found that running a business is harder than it looks and more overwhelming than you ever thought it would be. This podcast is the best of the best information that I've learned to help grow and sustain my business. Listen, subscribe, and follow along. We can avoid the overwhelm and start creating a business we love to run. Welcome back to the podcast. If you listen to the introduction, most of the time I talk about the three areas that I found that most small business owners are in when it comes to their bookkeeping. They're either in the DIY phase, they're in the outsourcing phase, or they're in the understanding phase. So today, I want to ask the question that should you DIY or outsource? Or I want you to ask yourself the question, should I DIY or outsource? So we're going to go through three questions, and I'll tell you those now before we dive into them. So number one, do I have money to outsource this, like extra money in my business? Number two, do I have complicated things like payroll, sales tax, or want to be on an accrual accounting basis? And number three, do I have time to do the bookkeeping? So those are the three questions I want you to ask yourself first and answer in your head. Do I have, let me say, at least $300 a month to outsource this? Number two, do I have complicated things like payroll, sales tax, or want to be on accrual? And number three, do I have time to do this? So number one, do you have at least $300 a month to outsource this? So if you don't have the funds to even pay a bookkeeper, then it's a no-go, obviously. If you're thinking, in the time it'll save me to outsource my bookkeeping, I can work and earn more money, then that's awesome. I would say still have a few months worth of bookkeeping funds saved up and hire someone short-term to do this and see if you can just sign like a 3-month contract with someone or just go month to month with them. So beware that sometimes bookkeepers will charge a few fees up front since they don't always know what they're getting themselves into, but generally they should be able to give you about how much it'll cost. So decide that for 3 or 4 months, you're going to outsource this, and then use that time you're spending to create more money to cover those costs to make sure that in the long run, you can actually pay someone to do this. I think that's the worst from a bookkeeper's perspective whenever they're working with the client, because they're going to know if you can afford them, and they're going to know if you're even paying yourself, or if you're paying your employees a decent wage, or if you're cutting corners in other places to pay them, and it's really uncomfortable from the bookkeeper's perspective, especially whenever they have to raise their prices or whenever they feel like that they're doing too much for you and they need to bump you up into another service package that you need, but you can't afford. Like it just gets really uncomfortable for the bookkeeper. So please make sure that you have enough money for them to pay them, because they're going to figure it out either way if you do or don't. And truthfully, they might drop you if they don't think that they can charge you more in the long run. Like if they see that you're only making, I don't know, like $5,000 a year in your business and you're trying to hire them, they probably won't keep you on as a client because they know that this is not going to be a long-term relationship, just FYI. Number two, do you have complicated things like payroll, sales tax, or want to be on an accrual accounting basis? If you don't know what an accrual accounting basis is, don't worry about it. Don't be on accrual. Please be on cash. It makes everything so much easier. But if you know about accounting or you just want to be fancy, that's fine. You can be on accrual, but don't say I didn't tell you that a tricky idea and you don't want to do it if you don't have to. So if you said yes to any of those things and you have no idea what you're doing, then yes, I would encourage you to hire someone who does. Not because those tasks are particularly difficult, besides the accrual accounting, but because it's a learning curve. And if you can outsource it, then it's just best to do so. And that's definitely considering that you have the money to pay someone to do those things, because you don't want to miss deadlines. You don't want to be so caught up in your business that you always forget to pay your sales tax, or you always forget to keep up with payroll. Those can cost you a lot of money later on. So just find someone reliable that can do those tasks for you. And number 3, do you have time to do your bookkeeping? Do you have time? Not just do you have time to do your bookkeeping, but have you been doing your bookkeeping? Well, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And just because you have time doesn't mean that you should either. You want to spend as much time as you can working on things that move your business forward. And if you're already maxed out just working on those things, then outsourcing your bookkeeping is a great option to get something off of your plate. In the last episode, I talked about a short book review of a book called High Performance Habits by Brendon Burchard. And I talked about the PQO, the prolific quality output. I just say PQO because I know what it means, because I know the general idea of what it is. But go back and listen to that episode if you're still struggling with not moving forward in your business at all, because we talk about how you need to figure out the tasks that move your business forward, and bookkeeping is not one of them. Like, you need to know the information at the end of the month, and that is going to be helpful, but actually, like, reconciling, it's not going to be something that moves your business forward. It has to be done. If you're a small business owner, like, you still have to have someone do it, and you're still responsible that it gets done. But if you don't have time, and if you have the money to outsource it, then I would recommend that you do that. Even if sometimes you enjoy it, it's best to outsource it and to just move on from there. And I also wanted to say something else. So if you are already maxed out just working on that, obviously outsourcing your bookkeeping is a great option to get something off of your plate, even if you spend that time just relaxing. I know, not working, just taking a mental break. In the long run, that'll make you more productive than holding on to a little bit of money each month just because you can do something. If you outsource it and you just take a breather, or start to take Fridays off, and maybe you hire a bookkeeper and a graphic designer and an editor or something to take all of your Friday tasks off your plate and just relax, it'll make you more productive in the long run. So the 3 questions again to ask yourself: should I DIY or outsource? Number 1, do you have at least $300 a month to outsource this task? Number 2, do you have complicated things in your business? And number 3, do you have time to do this? So I know that we've talked about the last several weeks about DIYing your bookkeeping, and I do still have the group, my Facebook group, where I help people with their the accountability for getting it done, because you still have to get it done no matter what. And I know a lot of people are in that DIY phase and they're not quite big enough to outsource yet, but they still have to get it done. So that's what that Facebook group is great for. But in the next couple weeks, not after next week's episode, but in all the episodes in September and October, I am talking all about